Good morning, sixth grade. You should have already watched the video regarding the Olympics in Greece. And we're going to go and continue on with Chapter 7, Lesson 2, Sparta and Athens, City-State Rivals.
Lesson 2, Sparta and Athens, City-State Rivals. It matters because the city-states of Athens and Sparta had two quite different governments. Athenian democracy strongly influenced later forms of democracy. Political changes. Guiding question. Which types of government did the Greek city-states have? As Greek city-states grew, wealthy nobles seized power from kings. They did not rule very long, however. Owners of small farms resented the nobles' power. Many of the farm owners had borrowed money from the nobles to buy land. When the farmers could not repay the loans, the nobles often took their land. The farmers then had to work for the nobles or move to the city to find jobs. In some cases, they even had to sell themselves into slavery. By 650 BC, small farmers wanted political change and a greater voice in government. Merchants and artisans also called for reforms. Merchants and artisans had earned a good living in the growing city-states. However, because they did not own land, they were not considered citizens. That meant they had no role in ruling the polis. The growing unrest led to the rise of tyrants. A tyrant is someone who seizes power and rules with total authority. Most tyrants who commanded city-states ruled fairly. However, the harsh rule of a few tyrants gave the word tyranny its current meaning. That is, rule by a cruel and unjust person. The common people of Greece supported the tyrants when they overthrew the nobles during the 600s BC. Tyrants also gained support from the hoplites, or citizen soldiers, in the army. Tyrants strengthened their popularity by building new temples, fortresses, and marketplaces. Nevertheless, most Greeks objected to rule by a single person. They wanted a government in which all citizens could participate. Tyrants ruled many of the Greek city-states until about 500 BC. From then until 336 BC, most city-states developed into either oligarchies or democracies. In an oligarchy, a few wealthy people hold power over the larger group of citizens. In a democracy, all citizens share in running the government. Two of the major city-states, Sparta and Athens, were governed differently and created very different societies. Sparta, a military society. Guiding question. Why did the Spartans focus on military skills? The city-state of Sparta was located on the Peloponnesus Peninsula in southern Greece. The Spartans were descended from the Dorians who invaded Greece in the Dark Age. Like other city-states, Sparta's economy was based on agriculture. Sparta did not set up overseas colonies. Instead, Sparta invaded neighboring city-states and enslaved the local people. The Spartans called their enslaved laborers helots, a word that comes from the Greek word for capture. A strong military. About 650 BC, the Helots revolted against their Spartan masters. The Spartans crushed that uprising. Sparta's leaders wanted to prevent future revolts. They decided to make Sparta a military society that stressed discipline. They also believed in simplicity and strength through self-denial. The leaders thought that a military society created more obedient and loyal citizens. Sparta's government prepared all boys and men for a life of war. Boys left their homes at age 7 to join the military. In military camps, they learned to read, write, and use weapons. They also were treated harshly. The military leaders believed that harsh treatment would turn the young boys into adults who would survive the pain of battle. The Greek historian Plutarch described life for Spartan boys. Primary source. They were enrolled in certain companies, where they all lived under the same order and discipline, doing their exercises and taking play together. Of these, he who showed the most conduct and courage was made captain. They obeyed his orders and underwent patiently whatsoever punishment he inflicted, delivered, so that the whole course of their education was one continued exercise of a ready and perfect obedience. From Plutarch, The Lives of the Noble Grecians and Romans. Spartan men entered the regular army at age 20. Men could marry during their 20s, but they were not allowed to live at home. Instead, they stayed in military camps, sharing barracks and eating meals with other soldiers. A typical army meal was a dish called black broth, pork boiled in animal blood, salt, and vinegar. Spartan men could live at home again when they reached the age of 30, but they continued to train for combat. They finally retired from the army at age 60. Since many Spartan men lived away from home, Spartan women enjoyed more freedom than the women of other Greek city-states. They could own property and travel. Girls were trained in sports, such as wrestling and throwing the javelin. They remained physically fit to fulfill their roles as mothers. Their main goal was to raise sons who were brave, strong Spartan soldiers. Spartan women expected their men to either win or die in battle. Spartan soldiers must never surrender. One Spartan mother ordered her son to come home carrying your shield or being carried on it. How was Sparta governed? Sparta's government was an oligarchy. 2 kings ruled jointly, but they had little power. Their only duties were to lead the army and carry out religious ceremonies. In addition to the kings, Sparta had 2 other governing bodies, the Assembly and the Council of Elders. The Assembly included all male citizens over the age of 30. The Assembly made decisions about war and peace. However, the Council of Elders was the most powerful body in the government. Council members served as judges. They were the only officials who could order executions or exile. Each year, the council elected 5 people to be ephors. The ephors enforced the laws and managed the collection of taxes. Sparta's strict government brought stability, but that stability cost the people of Sparta. Because the government feared losing the Helots, it discouraged free thinking and new ideas. Officials believed learning could lead to unrest. As a result, Sparta did not welcome foreign visitors and prevented citizens from traveling outside the city-state, except for military reasons. It even discouraged people from studying literature and the arts. In addition, Sparta resisted other types of change. For example, Spartans continued to use heavy iron bars for money when other Greeks used coins. This discouraged trade and isolated Sparta from the rest of Greece. While other city-states built up business and trade and improved their standard of living, Sparta remained a poor farming society. For Sparta's strong, well-trained army, the only important goals were military power and victory. The Spartans achieved Greece's greatest military strength and power. Sparta would play a key role in defeating Greece against invaders. Athens, a young democracy. Guiding question. How did the culture in Athens differ from other Greek city-states? Another great Greek city-state was Athens. It was located northeast of Sparta, about a 2-day trip away. Athens was founded by the descendants of the Mycenaeans and differed from Sparta in its ideas about society and government. An Athenian education. Athenians received an education far different from that of the Spartans. Athens educated its males as Sparta did. In Athenian schools, boys studied subjects such as arithmetic, geometry, drawing, music, and public speaking. They also participated in sports. The Athenians believed that this type of education produced young people with strong minds and bodies. At age 18, when boys finished school, they were expected to take an active role in public affairs. Athenian mothers educated their daughters at home. Girls were taught spinning, weaving, and other household duties. In some wealthy families, they learned to read, write, and play music. Women were expected to marry and care for their children. For the most part, women were not active in business or government in Athens. Early reforms. The history of Athens was much like that of the other Greek city-states. By about 600 BC, most Athenian farmers owed money to the nobles. Some farmers were forced to sell themselves into slavery to repay their debts. Athenians began to rebel. Farmers called for an end to all debts. They also asked that land be distributed to the poor. To avoid an uprising, the nobles agreed to make some changes. They turned to a respected merchant named Solon for leadership. In 594 BC, Solon ended the farmers' debts and freed those who were enslaved. He also opened the assembly and the law courts to all male citizens. The assembly was responsible for passing laws written by a council of 400 wealthy citizens. The common people praised Solon's reforms. Still, many Athenians were unhappy. Wealthy people felt Solon had gone too far, while poor people thought he had not gone far enough. By the time Solon left office, he had lost much of his support. In 560 BC, a tyrant named Pisistratus took over the government. A relative of Solon, Pisistratus made reforms that went even further than those that Solon had made. Pisistratus divided large estates among farmers who had no land. He provided loans to help farmers buy equipment to work their farms. He gave citizenship to Athenians who did not own land. He also hired the poor to construct temples and other public works. Since religion was important in Athens, Pisistratus built additional shrines to different gods. He also encouraged the worship of the goddess Athena. Under Pisistratus, festivals held to honor Athena were expanded by the addition of athletic contests. Toward democracy. After the death of Pisistratus, a noble named Cleisthenes became the next leader of Athens. Prizing democracy, Cleisthenes made the assembly the city-state's major governing body. As before, all male citizens could participate in the assembly and vote on laws. Assembly members could now discuss issues freely, hear legal cases, and appoint army officials. Cleisthenes also created a new council of 500 citizens. They were to help the assembly manage daily government affairs. The council introduced laws and controlled the treasury. They also managed relations with other city-states. Each year, Athenian citizens held a lottery to choose the council members. Athenians preferred the lottery system over an election. In their view, an election might unfairly favor the rich who were well known. Terms on the council were limited to 1 year, and no one could serve on the council for more than 2 terms. Thus, every citizen had a chance to be a council member. While Cleisthenes' reforms made the government of Athens more democratic, many residents were still excluded from the political process. People who were not citizens still could not participate in the government. This group included all Athenian women, foreign-born men, and enslaved people. Connections to today. The Olympics. The ancient Olympic Games were held every 4 years at Olympia in the western part of Greece in honor of the god Zeus. The first Olympics were organized in 776 BC. According to one legend, the founder of the games was the hero Hercules. The modern Olympics began in 1896 in Athens.